The gap between men and women in the workplace is widening around the world. According to the International Labour Organization, women have been hit harder than men by job losses during the coronavirus pandemic, and they're also having a harder time getting back into work. Well, let's get more now from Emanuela Pozzan, a senior gender and non-discrimination specialist at the International Labour Organization. She joins us now from Vicenza in Italy. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, Emanuela. It really is an alarming finding, isn't it? 13 million fewer women are likely to be employed this year compared with before the pandemic, while men are expected to recover almost all of the jobs lost from a couple of years ago. Why are women finding it harder to get back into employment?
Hello, and thank you for having me in your program. So, as you said, between 2019 and 2020, women's employment declined by 4.2% compared to men's employment that declined by 3%. While men are going to be able to recuperate the jobs that they had lost, this is not going to be the same for women. And as you said, we expect 13 million women less going back to work compared to before the crisis. So if we look at the reasons, first of all, there's still a very high segregation in the labor market. And therefore, we see that women work in those sectors that have been particularly impacted by COVID-19, such as the manufacturing, accommodation, hospitality, services. These are sectors that have suffered tremendously from the lockdowns. And these are also sectors that are characterized by poor working conditions and low skills and limited digitalization. And we see that COVID is accelerating changes in production patterns. And some of those jobs that were there before the pandemic are not going to be there anymore after the pandemic. And so here the need to improve the skills, and women unfortunately still lag behind in a lot of skills, including digital skills. The second reason is that women have been tremendously overwhelmed by unpaid care work due to restrictions and closure of care services. And so in the absence of adequate measures, many women had to choose between staying in the job, staying attached to the job, and quit the job and care for the family. And therefore, it will be very difficult for women to go back to their jobs, because some of these jobs will also not exist anymore. And finally, we need to remember that many women work in the informal economy. Therefore, they have limited access to social protection, and at times they are exposed to violence and harassment. And all these reasons make it difficult for women to stay attached to the work and to come back to the work.
So where in the world is women's employment most at risk?
So certainly, we have seen that not all regions have been impacted in the same way by the crisis, but the Americas was the region that experienced the greatest reduction in women's employment as a result of the pandemic. We are talking of minus 9.4% of women compared to 7% for men. The second highest drop in number of employed women was observed in the Arab states. Between 2019 and 2020, women's employment declined by 4.1% compared to 1.9% of men's employment. And these regions were followed by Asia and the Pacific, Europe and Central Asia, and finally Africa, where women's employment growth is actually expected to offset the job losses resulting from COVID-19. But we need to remember that the job quality and dependence on the informal economy remains major concerns.
Okay, Emanuela Pozzan from the International Labour Organization. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much again for joining us on Money Talks.